Hey tankers, and welcome back to World of Tanks with PR154, and today we are following QSF-Dropout-Raspberry of the Lemon Clan in the Tier 10 Czech heavy tank, the VZ55. Now, QSF-Dropout-Raspberry is on track to try to 3-mark this tank. That's what a lot of tankers who are at the top of their game, they've ground everything out, they've done all the lines. What else do we do? I know, let's just put 3 marks of excellence on all our tanks. So we're very close to that. Accordingly, that's reflected in the loadout here today. They've loaded nothing but the premium ammunition this time. They're running food as a premium consumable as well. However, I don't want that to necessarily distract from the game here today. I don't want the lesson from this game to be, okay, if you want to do fantastically in a tank, you have to load all the gold. This is just some decisions that the QSF Dropout has made in the course of 3-marking the vehicle. So he's already positioned to try to catch heavy tanks on the cross as they particularly as they're trying to get into this area. I've often found with many heavy tanks it can be a bit of a mission trying to side scrape from here. So I personally like to make use of this new pathway through the zero line. But prioritising targets, he's put 2 holes in the T110E5, the Tier 10 vehicle, but notice there's also a few Tier 8s that have followed up as well. Again, the fact that QSF Raspberry is a top-tiered vehicle in this game, I don't want that to distract from how good a game that this is for QSF Dropout-Raspberry. The enemy has made a concerted push into this E0 area. Raspberry's team hasn't really moved to counter that, and quite frankly, they don't seem to have all that many resources there that are able to plug the gap. QSF Raspberry is probably not going to be in a position to hold back that tide themselves either. So they've moved to the back end of the city, hoping to catch some of these enemy vehicles as they dribble out. So there are at least 3 enemy heavy tanks occupying D0. Still quite a few enemy vehicles that are sort of down occupying the traditional heavy tank slugfest area, but popping out, putting a bit of distance between himself and the enemy. He's been able to put 2 nice meaty hits into the IS-3, and that with a 1,000-point deficit, that's really limited their ability to have further impact on the battle. In fact, the friendly VK-100-01P has shut them down while tracked, so that's a bit of extra assist damage there for QSF Dropout-Raspberry. A couple of silly pokes by the enemy through this area, that continues to provide opportunity for Raspberry here. Fortunately, the 2 hits put into the T110E5 earlier in the game have left it in quite a one-shottable position. Sort of if it were eating a Dorito and the Dorito broke and then it ends up stabbing the roof of the commander's mouth, that tank would be dead. That's how few hit points the T110E5 has left. So consider it no longer able to really assist with the offensive on that game, but that doesn't change the fact that there's still 3 enemy vehicles there. Outnumbered, QSF Raspberry is withdrawing from the city. Note the turret is still pointing, was still pointing behind for a while, since that's where the enemy's coming from. Going for the lower frontal plate shot on the AE Phase 1. That's one of the areas that is weaker on the AE Phase 1, and of course when you get, what do we have here, 306mm of penetration on the premium round for the VZ55, that's certainly going to find its mark on that armour facing. We have conceded the city here pretty much. The ST1 and the SU-130 PM have sort of stuck around to try to stem the tide, but unfortunately that's going to put them in probably a 5v2. They'll be lucky to get 1 shot into the enemy each before they're before they're ultimately knocked out. Now, while the VZ-55 has quite a nice turret, the hull is still a little bit glassy unless you're fighting from a hull down position. So keeping distance from the enemy is key. And that is probably one of the most expensive credits of ammunition versus hit point exchange I've seen in a while, with the premium round knocking off the last remaining 3 hit points of the T110E5. We've got Raspberry summoning the general retreat on the AT-15 and the G-Saw. These enemy heavy tanks, they've probably got the initiative here, the ability to maybe side scrape out block shots and return fire. They're sort of controlling the cap circle as well. Again, QSF Dropout-Raspberry pulling back to try to maintain distance between them and the enemy. We probably have a fairly good spotting acumen here between the G-Saw 1008 and the AT-15. Hopefully with this order of distance from the T-34, Raspberry can go about their business without being spotted. I guess the intent with this position is to try to catch the enemy in between the maximum view range and the draw distance here. That will enable QSF Dropout-Raspberry to engage these enemy tanks, shoot these enemy tanks without being spotted and attracting fire in return. Bearing in mind also, he's also a top-tiered vehicle, still with his full collection of hit points. So if things do go wrong for the teammates, he still has a fair bit of hit point reserve to sort of fight his way through if necessary. Now you might consider this behaviour to be quite campy, and I guess from a certain point of view it is, but that position there had enabled Raspberry to service either these guys as they engage the enemy in the south, or these guys should the enemy choose to push out from the north. In this case, Raspberry has elected to support the teammates in the north. That's where the cap is, and that's where the enemy happens to have the advantage and the initiative at this point in time. Bearing in mind they are also 2 guns up. Fortunately, Raspberry has 20 shells left, so certainly not running out of ammo anytime soon, and certainly not running out of opportunities either. These AT-15 and G-Saw are doing a fantastic job of keeping the enemy lit as they poke out of the city. Now Raspberry's got opportunity to slam the KV-5. Can he nail the second shot? Yes, he can, shutting that enemy down. Still at a 2-gun disadvantage despite that kill. I believe we lost the AMX 30 Alt Proto near the cap circle, where the enemy Progetto 65 was defending. Less than a minute left on the cap circle, so it'll be up to Raspberry to push in and try to get that reset. Well, it looks like the Caliban has actually dropped off the cap circle. Opportunities for crossfire here on the Centurion 1 and the T-34 as they attempt to round on the tank destroyers. So moving around it, changing that firing angle has basically been able to keep those Tier 8 tank destroyers in the game a little bit longer. Now we've got the full health CS-53, the Tier 8 Polish medium tank. Unfortunately, the frontal armour there, no match for the 305mm penetration of the premium APCR on the VZ-55. Again, Raspberry has elected to go with that loadout because he is trying to 3-mark the vehicle, but doing quite well under the circumstances, and probably quite fortunate for his team today that that's the loadout that he tried to take, because this game is running on the slimmest of margins right now. Trying to towel up the Caliban, it's loosed both of its shells, so it's got probably the better part of a minute to try to reload. Fortunately, that's for Raspberry, that's not quite quick enough, and is able to knock out the Caliban. Now, bearing in mind a full clip from the Caliban firing its own APCR shells, it could quite easily punch through the upper frontal plate of QSF-Dropout-Raspberry and sort of do so for about 1200 hit points. So, rounding the corner, he eats around from the AE phase 1, probably a little bit calculated there, but he was able to one-shot the AE phase 1. This just leaves the Progetto 65, who is still retaining most of its hit points and has just won the duel against the Centurion Action 10. This just leaves the AT-15 and QSF-Dropout-Raspberry. Now, QSF-Dropout-Raspberry is potentially going to struggle here in a brawl against that Progetto. Is probably, I'd say, a two-shottable condition for the Progetto. But moving in and trying to get to the cap in this circle will hopefully give them the initiative. That should draw the Progetto 65 out and into the firing line for the AT-15. So even if QSF-Dropout-Raspberry can't knock it out in its entirety, then hopefully AT-15 will be able to oblige. And it looks like the plan is coming off beautifully despite Raspberry's demise. It's one shot, two shot, just looking for one more shot into the Progetto 65. Unfortunately, it had gone dark before the AT-15 could land the killing shot. And with its position given away and not exactly the highest concealment rating tank or the highest mobility tank, AT-15's options here are quite limited indeed. Relocating is probably going to leave the tank exposed for a prolonged period. And then staying, of course, potentially exposes AT-15 here to all sorts of blind fire nastiness. But the lesser of two evils is staying put and just waiting to see what that Progetto 65 does. We are somewhat centrally located here, so if the Progetto 65 makes a play for the cap circle and doesn't do so by running deep, there's potentially an opportunity here for the AT-15 to spot them. So we are just waiting with bated breath and anticipation to see what happens next. Is the Progetto 65 going to claim its 6th kill for the Top Gun and the win? Or is Average Joe 69 of the New Zealand native contingent going to pull this one off? 2 minutes left and the anticipation is killing us. Unfortunately, this could have been a win there already. Unfortunately, QSF-Dropout-Raspberry had missed their first shot, but the AT-15 is on the case. They have been able to spot the Progetto 65, who didn't quite make the cross nice and deep. They know they've been spotted, not quite sure from where. Swing and a miss by the AT-15, and they are now spotted. But Progetto 65 is not able to lay gun on quickly enough and is knocked out by Average Joe 69. So brilliantly played there by Average Joe and QSF-Dropout-Raspberry there in the Tier 10 Czech Heavy Tank VZ55. Let's take a quick look at those results. There you go, folks, an Ace Mastery badge for their efforts on the field of battle today by QSF-Dropout-Raspberry of the Lemon Clan, and has also achieved the 3rd barrel mark. So fantastic game all round and a well-deserved result there. We've picked up an absolute fistful of these Epic and Battle Heroes medals. We've got Top Gun for claiming at least 6 kills on the enemy team. in which case we picked up 7 kills. 8 would have been a Radley Walters medal, but wasn't quite to be today. We picked up the high caliber medal for accounting for at least 20% of the hit point pool of the enemy team, and we've also picked up the tanker sniper medal for causing the highest damage of the battle from distances of at least 300 meters. And you can sort of see that in the standoff sort of play style that QSF-Dropout-Raspberry was taking, and that was quite essential when they were outnumbered. So as using distance, using the mobility of the vehicle to try to work around those vehicles that were providing the eyes is one of those things that needs to be observed when you're working with spotters. It's no good being close to the spotter. Often you want to be at least 2 grid squares behind, so that way you have less chance of being spotted yourself, and it just ultimately gives you more opportunities to get more shots on target before the enemy team catches up to those spotters, and that becomes quite crucial. We've also picked up a couple of badges of merit here. We've got the Bruiser medal for damaging enemy vehicle modules or crew members at least 5 times in the course of the battle. We've got the Duelist medal for destroying at least 2 enemy vehicles that have caused damage to them in turn, and Fire for Effect medal, which goes hand in glove with the high caliber medal. Having a look at the team scores, some very good play here. Quite a convincing distance over his teammates with experience points accrued here by QSF-Dropout-Raspberry, but of course a very well-deserved second placement here by Average J69 of the New Zealand native contingent. Also Pickled Jester doing it quite well in the Alt Proto AMX30. So that vehicle we didn't see so much of. It was sort of fighting its way through the other flank where they had a bit of a numerical advantage, was able to get almost all the way to the enemy cap and really threaten that until they met their demise by the Progetto 65. Speaking of whom, they had placed top on experience on their team, taking nearly 6,000 damage from Raspberry's team and claiming 5 kills as well, including QSF-Dropout-Raspberry. Also, the AE Phase 1 had done quite well as they were sort of carving their way through whatever resistance that Raspberry's team had sort of put up in the city until the point that Raspberry were able to ultimately shut them down. So very well played as well by Ant Red VN and Smiley. Having a look at the detailed report, surprisingly, this had actually yielded a profit, although there were some contributing factors. We've got battle payments that were running, we've got personal missions payout, so that was adding to the equation as well, and also a credit booster. Probably quite essential when you're trying to 3-mark vehicles, because it tends to be expensive when you're running all gold loadouts and all the consumables and all the rest of it. And you can see that sort of reflected here in the ammunition cost and the consumables cost. That's over. That's nearly 200,000 credits of expenditure on ammo and consumables. Of course, being knocked out didn't really help. There's a bit of a repair bill there. Certainly not as bad as it could have been, but still turning a net profit there. Although without the mission completions, without the battle payments, without the personal reserves, we're probably looking at about 120,000 credit deficit. But if you had the choice, say, all right, you can spend 120,000 credits to get an ace and a 3-mark, I'm pretty sure most people would take that. And so very well done there to QSF-Dropout-Raspberry. And if you've got a replay that you're really happy with and you'd like to share with the community, then please reach out over Discord or any of the links below, and we'll do our best to sort you out. In the meantime, take care out there.